The first thing, when I retired from work, one of the things that I wanted to do is stay involved in growing fruits and vegetables, because that's what I did when I was about your age. I was on a small farm. So the chance came up for us to take for me to take the Master Gardener class, and so I looked into finding out what was involved in all that. It's a class that's about, I'd say, 8 months long, and it's about once a week. You spend 3 hours in class studying all different kinds of different aspects of plants and the soils and bugs. We're taught quite a bit. And then after that class is over, it usually runs from August till January, February. Then you take a test, and then you have to make a presentation on a topic that you choose. So I finished the class and was able to. There's a whole lot of things that you can do as a master gardener. They have all kinds of projects around the county. And one of the projects that we have that I became very involved in was John Ruby Park is one of the parks of York County Parks Association. And they have a garden, a trial gardens down there. And so the master gardeners have the opportunity to go down there and work this garden. And we grow all kinds of flowers as well as fruits and vegetables. And then when we harvest that all goes down to the York County Food Bank. And they're sold to the inner city people who want to come to buy them. So it's a garden that's about, I would say, close to a half an acre. And we grow just about anything you can think of down there. We have fruit trees. We have all kinds of berries. We even have a experimental bed down there where we don't water it. We just leave it dry because it's. We plant things there and see how they would do for Ghana, Africa. And we've had several master gardeners, go to Ghana, Africa, and help them try to establish gardens over there. I was able to go not last year, but the year before last. And the temperature and the climate here is a whole lot different than over there. That's why we don't, in that special bed, we don't give them any water, because we try to create the same conditions that they would have over there. And it's a challenge trying to find something that will grow in that kind of a climate. So most of what we grow down at the park. There are some things that we plants there, but most of the stuff that we grow down there started from seed. I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and depending upon what the plant is, actually determines when you should start your seed. So I don't know exactly the biology of the seed, but a lot of times the measure of how deep you plant the seed when you're going to start has to do with how thick the seed is. The smaller the seed, the closer it stays to the surface. A seed usually, they usually say to usually about twice the diameter of the seed is about how far down you plant the seed. Some seeds actually take sunlight to germinate. And so that's why they need to be planted right close to the surface, because they need the sun. Do you have a question? Do you have a question? Oh, okay.
Now, for those of you that are not in my class, you haven't planted any seeds yet. At all. But you will be within the next few weeks or the next month, because like Mr. Cook said, different seeds are planted at different times.
Yeah, you can't, most of what we plant here has to be planted after um, Mother's Day, because that's the average date of the last frost. Small plants, when they come up, are very tender, and frost has a tendency to kill them if they're not protected. So once Mother's Day gets here, then you can start planting most things. There are some other plants that can be planted before that. They're very hardy, and frost doesn't usually affect them. Your broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, lettuce, spinach, those kinds of things can be planted early. But one of the reasons we start planting from seed now is because the plant will be started, getting going when you can plant it into the ground. Now you can plant just about any seed in the ground, after May the 15th. But by the time it grows, then you don't have as much of a harvest season. You don't have as much time to get the fruit and vegetables off of the plants. So that's the reason we start seeds a little earlier. It kind of extends the growing season.
So you're going to see them as plants, those like what we have over there, and as soon as you start to see the sprouts, we're going to transfer them into bigger pots. Because Mr. Cook said that the smaller the seed, the smaller we're able to start planting them. And then what's going to happen is we have a connection to Mrs. Hughes' class, because Mrs. Hughes' class is going to care for them because the conditions aren't very good at Round Town, we have learned in years past. So can you talk to us about why they're going to the greenhouse and not here?
Yeah. What a greenhouse does, it's kind of like it's a glass enclosure. And what that does is it allows the sun to come through, because once plants come up, they need 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. And if the plant is sitting in a corner, it won't get the amount of sunlight that it needs to grow. So the greenhouse, what that does is that kind of allows you to, the sun comes through the greenhouse, the glass enclosure, and it heats up the inside. And then that makes the temperature where the plants are growing the same as it would be if it was in the summertime. It's very warm in a greenhouse, and it's very moist. So that's why you use a greenhouse, and that will allow the plant to get to the size that you want when you put it into the ground.
Now, how many degrees should it be in the greenhouse as they're being cared for?
You have to be careful. A lot of greenhouses have what they call automatic openers. And
That's
what that
what
does
ours
is
Okay, that's what Mrs. Hughes does.
Okay.
Yeah, ours has,
Oh.
ours depending on where can you hear me okay, Jerry?
Yes.
Okay. Ours, depending on where we set the temperature, obviously, when it hits that, it's an automatic open and an automatic fan goes on.
Mm-hmm. And probably the warmest you want to keep it is 80 degrees.
80?
80.
Okay.
Right. As soon as it gets to 80 degrees, you want that thing to start opening. And then you can actually keep it down to 40 degrees at night if you want.
Okay.
But you have to make sure that it has good ventilation.
Right.
There's doors are open or windows are open, so it gets a lot of good ventilation. And because a lot of times, right along the soil line, especially in small plants, that's where if they're moist, if the ground is moist, there's a disease called I can think of the hardy home now. Can't think of what it's called now. But anyhow, what the plants will do is they'll grow, and then all of a sudden they'll just fall over.
Right. We've had that happen before with some other things.
Yeah, one of the things you can do for that is to try to keep the soil not quite as moist.
Okay.
And I always put my pots in a tray.
Yeah, and that's what we did that last year.
And I put the water in the tray and let it feed from the bottom up, so that the soil line, has a tendency to stay a little bit drier.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, once these plants get to the right size, and it's warm out, it's Mother's Day, and you're ready to plant outside. Well, it's actually before that. Actually, you start about 2 weeks before Mother's Day. It's a process called hardening off. The plants in the greenhouse are tender. They're not very strong. And if they were in a real strong wind or a real hot sun, what would happen is that would just wilt them and they would die. So you have to acclimate them to the outside temperature. So what normally takes place is you take the pots out in the outside where the conditions are not in the sun. You have to put them in the shade. And that way the sun doesn't hit them. You only do that for a couple hours and then you bring them back in. And then the next day you'll maybe take them out and leave them for an extra 2 hours or so. And then you bring them back in. So you just keep doing it longer and longer and allow them to get to the point where they're comfortable outside, and then they'll survive when they're planted. One of the things I do to try to help them become stronger as they're growing is I have an oscillating fan that moves back and forth. And as they're growing, you can see the oscillating fan moving the tomatoes. What will strengthen the tomato roots is the waving back and forth. Waving back and forth, and if they're allowed to dry a little bit and then feed them water, and then dry a little bit and feed them water, that also will allow them to strengthen the roots, because when there's no water where the roots are, they will go down to try to find more water. And so that actually strengthens the roots and allows them to be a much stronger plant when you're ready to plant it.
Does that make sense? It's kind of like getting used to a cold pool. You put your little toe in, then you put a little bit more in. That's what you do to the plants to get them used to being outside. And you think plants are outside, they should be able to be outside, but when you start growing them inside, they're really tender.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
how long, at the point when we're doing the hardening off process,
Yes.
how long should we start initially having the plants out?
It depends on the conditions outside.
Okay.
If it's a real windy day, I usually put mine outside and I put something around them so that the wind doesn't have a tendency to hit right at them.
Okay.
If it's just a light breeze, put them outside and leave them outside for a couple hours. Sometimes I'll do this in the morning, real early, and of course, being retired, I can do it. I have the availability all day. I can do this early in the morning when it's not hot and the breezes are more calm, and then more in the evening when the sun goes down and the winds kind of tend to die down a little bit.
Okay.
But I would start with 2 hours and then maybe 4 hours and work up to where you can leave them in the sun. The one thing you want to do before you plant them is you want to make them get them to the point where you can set them in the sun for 2 or 3 hours, and then you're ready to plant them.
Okay.
When they're in pots and you're doing this hardening off process with the breeze and the heat and everything, pots will have a tendency to dry out really fast. So you're probably going to have to water them very often, maybe every other day or so, because the small pots will have a tendency to dry out real quick.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions about
Any
that?
questions?
No? Holy smokes. So what happens after they're going, so whenever they're ready to go to John Rudy Park, we'll call you
Okay.
and let you know. And then what? Then what do we do with them? What happens to them?
Well, if they're ready to go to John Rudy Park and they're hardened off, what will happen is I can come and pick them up. I will probably be picking them up, I guess, at the middle school.
Yep.
And I will take them out and plant them.
Yep. Now, do you have to care for them like that when they're in the ground too? Do you have to worry about?
Once they're in the ground, there's not much caretaking done. We have what's called soaker hoses. We run along the tomatoes are planted in a row, and then we run a hoe hose along the bottom of the tomato plant, and a soaker hose is one that's got real little tiny holes in it. And when you turn the water on, what happens to the soaker hose, you see water just seep out the hose. And it comes out real slow and is able to soak right into the ground. And so we have timers on all of the hoses that they only come on like 1 hour per day. But most of the plants we don't care a whole lot, after they're planted.
Okay.
The tomatoes, what we do with tomatoes is we have 5-foot cages because they grow so tall. And they're about 18 inches in diameter, and then we try to keep them within that cage.
Okay.
Because once they start bearing tomatoes, then they'll
Get heavy. Yeah.
They get very heavy.
Okay. Giovanna, did you have a question? Okay, nice and loud.
Why did you want to start planting food and flowers?
Well, when you're growing up on a farm, and this is what you're used to doing, it's kind of like once you learn to play a game, you know how when you play a game you like to keep playing the game. Well, I got used to growing vegetables, and we're able to take the vegetables that we do grow. I'm able to harvest them and put them in the freezer, and then I have vegetables to eat all year long. It actually saves me money from having to go to the store, and it's fun just watching them grow. Yes.
When you were on a farm, did the horses help you plant things or anything?
No, just my dad, my mom, and I.
The young man in the blue had his hand up for a while. What's your question, buddy?
I also got, number one, I thought can we able to go and see him at the park?
Yes, you can.
And that Michael Polk, he's also a gardener.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So how can you find them at the park?
They will be labeled. They will be labeled at the park. I had talked to the lady who's in charge of the Master Gardener program out at the yesterday I talked to her because we're setting up for the flower show. We have a booth at the flower show, and I think what we will do is we will probably put a little sign out there that tells which tomatoes are from your class. So you'll be able to see which tomatoes are grown
From around town in the middle school.
around town in the
Yep.
middle school. Right.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Okay. Zach?
Is like the hose under the dirt and soaking going up onto the plants?
Yeah, we put we don't put it underneath the dirt. What we do is we put it down next to the plant, and then we put mulch on top of it. What mulch does is has a tendency to keep the sun from drying the ground out, and it keeps the water in the ground longer. Uh-oh, what's happening?
Okay. That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Okay. Sorry. Okay. We can just lean it against the wall.
Hey, Amy.
Anna, are you okay? You okay, dear? Come here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Okay, sorry, Mr. Cook.
That's okay. That's fine.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
A couple of my students have a couple of questions, and we're going to have to sign off pretty soon.
Yep.
Could we go
Absolutely.
to a couple questions?
You bet.
Okay. Hang on just a second. There you are.
Say for instance, over the weekend, the plants don't get water. Will they survive? So,
Over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you water them on a Friday, they don't usually last till Saturday, till Monday morning. You don't usually have a problem with that.
Were you able to hear him?
Yes, did you hear the response?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, if you water them like on a Friday before you go home for the weekend, they'll be good till Monday morning.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Next one.
Okay.
This is Lorna.
Hi, Lorna.
Okay. But it really greenhouse for this is probably
Are there greenhouses that are self-watering?
Well, I don't think so. Like I said, what we do down at the park is we have these hoses, the soaker hoses already in place, and we have timers on them. The water is on all the time, and the timers will allow the water to start and water the plants down there. So I'm assuming that there probably are greenhouses that have automatic watering. I just, not familiar with them.
Are there any others?
Yeah, we have about 2 more. Hey, this is Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
Anyways, I was wondering perhaps if during project, did you think any of the plants are gonna die?
Sandy, that was really hard to understand. Can you talk a little more louder, a little louder?
I was wondering perhaps if you think any of the plants might die during this project.
Okay. Do you think there will be any plants that don't survive this project?
Yes, yes. Assuredly, there will be, yes.
I would agree with that.
But we're going to try our best, Sandy.
What I usually do is when I start my seeds, I'll usually put 2 seeds in a pot. And then as they come up, most of the time, one will be a little higher than the other. So instead of disrupting the roots, what I will do is the one that's the smallest, the one that's the weakest, I'll just take a pair of scissors and cut that one off. Because it will take nutrients and water away from the larger plant, and the larger plant then will grow and become stronger.
We have one more question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, and we do have some students that are having to leave that have come over from other class areas. All right. Now, our last question is from Aria. And if you could stand up, Aria, that would be fabulous. Oops, hold on. Okay, go ahead. Nice and loud.
You know how many plants are gonna get?
How many plants are they gonna get?
Oh goodness.
Were you able to hear that one?
No.
Okay, what Aria wanted to know was, and this might be more for you, Mrs. Masson,
Yes.
is about how many plants are we going to be getting?
Well, we have,
How many cabbage did you have started?
I believe we have, help me out, guys. I know we have 24 cauliflower,
Yeah.
24 broccoli.
Broccoli?
Yeah.
We have 6 red cabbage, and 12 or 24, 12 green cabbage. 50 tomatoes are going to be planted.
Right?
And then 36 hot peppers
Hot peppers.
and
12
sweet peppers.
sweet peppers.
So you're getting like the produce department of Giant.
Woohoo!
Oh boy.
Okay. All right. Everybody else is good?
Okay.
Okay. We're gonna have to disconnect because it's time to pass classes in about 7 minutes, and we have a couple things to finish up. Is there
Okay.
anything else, Jerry, that you think we should be aware of before we break our connection?
There's probably some other things, and I'll probably think of them as soon as I leave.
Well, I can always talk to you too, so.
Okay.
But
Thank you for Skyping in, Mrs. Hughes, and thank you, 7th grade, for asking good questions and being good listeners.
And thank you, 3rd graders also. We'll talk to you